writing for on and off since I was a child. Actually, I've tried to write a story for my dad when I was about 6 that never actually had an ending, and have sort of on and off been writing bits here and there, but for the last sort of properly writing for about the last 4 years.
Well, I've been writing all my life, really, writing stories, but I started seriously writing probably about 2 years ago. When I realised I wanted to go into screenwriting, I decided to just commit to it and start writing properly.
I've been writing forever, actually. I've actually still got the first poem that I ever wrote when I was 5, and I've kind of just written ever since, but I never really took it seriously because I thought I was going to be an artist, not a writer. And it wasn't until I made a radio series a few years ago that I realised that actually what I'd been doing all the way along was writing, and that I needed to start taking it seriously.
My piece was inspired by the theme of a moment in time. I was thinking about the theme, and it drew me to a train station, because I always find at train stations you have these weird moments on your own that are like silent, but they're quite significant. And I was always conscious about the time at a train station, because obviously there's clocks everywhere, and that sort of brought me to the story of a train spotter. And I was also influenced by a short film called Syrup, which is about how a change in a man's life affects his routines.
The inspiration for my story actually came from a Wendy Cope poem called After the Lunch, and it's told from the woman's perspective after they've been on a date, and I thought it would be interesting to tell the same story but from the man's point of view in prose.
Yeah, I was inspired by the moment in time theme, and it was something that I wrote specifically, and it actually was a moment in my time where I was baking cakes and washing school uniforms and thinking about the kind of the domestic interior, but also how that relates out to politics at the moment, which is where the squeeze middle comes from. So I think that's where it came from.
I tend to write mostly about relationships between people, either sort of in couples or families, that sort of thing, and just sort of the way that people interact with each other.
There's a lot of things that I write about, different themes, but they're kind of all join up, really. I'm particularly interested in psychogeography, so I'm interested in the psychology of spaces and walking and experiencing different places and the effect that has on you. Also, I'm very interested in writing about motherhood and negotiating space as a mother, especially as a single parent. And I'm very interested in feminism in general, and but also how that relates back to fairy tales and mythology. So there's quite a lot of different themes running through my work.
I usually like to write films that are centred around characters. They're usually dramas, thrillers, and they usually centre around characters that are sort of forced into a desperate situation or a great change in their life, because I like to sort of explore the extent of humanity, how far we can go, and how people can change when they're put in certain situations.
Well, I've been writing kind of experimental prose, I suppose. I normally write poetry, but I do write prose as well, and so it's kind of finding the balance between the poem and prose. I'm actually going to be doing quite a big piece on walking around Richmond, which is where I spent some of my childhood, so that's what I'll be concentrating on over the summer.
For my MA at the moment, I've been mostly concentrating on writing short stories, but I'm doing it part-time, so come next year when I'm doing writers' workshops, I hope to get going on my novel idea, which is set in the Second World War.
I'm currently in my second year studying film. At the moment we're making a documentary on animals in captivity, which involved going to the zoo and shooting for the day, which is quite fun really. But yeah, at the moment I'm working on editing that. We're on the final stages, so it's coming along well.
Yeah, write every day and keep writing and write a lot all the time, but also don't be precious about it. When I did my BA at Kingston, and I did creative writing and journalism, and that was quite a good mix because you had the very creative side, but also the discipline of journalism was quite rigorous. And when you're writing a journalistic piece, you have to be really kind of disciplined about letting go of stuff that's not working. And so one of the lecturers, Brian Cathcart, says murder your darlings, and that's good advice. It's hard at first, but it's good advice.
Yeah, I'd done a screenwriting module last year, and the teacher, who I think he wrote for soaps, he told me your character always needs to have a dramatic need. Once you establish that, he'll carry you through the story. So that's always something that's good to stick to.
Two good bits of writing advice that I've come across. One is write every single day, mostly for the discipline actually, because once you kind of get into it, it's easier to keep going. And the second piece of writing advice is when you are doing your own writing, try and kind of keep your writing heroes to one side so they don't sort of get in the way when you're trying to do your own work.
The cold wash, the rerun, the also ran, cakes cooling on a wire rack for the coffee morning, smells of baking and polished surfaces, school uniform clean, if crumpled. Reflecting on the slow dawn of the game, played by those born with access to the rules. Climb over everyone else, if one has to. Keep the long straw behind one's back. Cook the books and travel in self-congratulatory packs, whilst assuming a path through the eye of the needle. Win, incipient sclerosis of compassion, leading to a cold heart, surrounded by pleached trees and a sense of entitlement. To the owners of the short straws proffered, those who mutely flounder hoping it's not too late, the rerun, the also ran, the whitewash.
Int bedroom morning, small, coordinated and clean. This is Gilbert's room. Gilbert is a short, lonely man in his early 30s. On the walls of his dull room hang numerous pictures displaying the variety of trains. By his bed, a large train set, intricate in design, indulgent in detail. Shelves of books line the spaces between furniture, the dominant trend of these books being a fascination with trains. The pattern is emerging. From beneath the covers, Gilbert reveals himself. He rises without hesitation, cushioning his feet in a pair of flocculent slippers.
I think I'm in love with you. I thought about saying it out loud, even before you left, wondering whether I could time it just right, so that the wind would catch it and whip it down the Thames without you actually hearing. The words kept bubbling up, teasing the inside of my mouth, daring me.